This is always a great time to fly a drone early in the morning when the sun is at the golden hour stage. I always worry, though, in some of these dinky, small little towns if I'm waking people up.
What you doing?
Flying a drone.
Huh?
Flying a drone.
Why?
Because I'm making a video.
Well, you're on my property.
This is private. This is public right here. This is a road. So I always remember that. Otherwise, great time to fly a drone. Vermilion County, Illinois is an economically depressed county. Once reliant on thousands of coal mining jobs, those jobs are no longer here. Danville, the county seat, used to also have thousands of other jobs offered through manufacturing. These manufacturers provided jobs not just for Danville residents, but also for residents of the surrounding cities, villages, and unincorporated communities that I'll show you in this video. And as you'll see in this video, it's not just Danville that's falling apart in this area of the state. First off, I'm not going to be able to show you every small city, village, or unincorporated community in Vermilion County in this video, so if you think the videos on my main channel are my main focus, you know, the channel that I have nearly 90,000 subscribers on, well, you're wrong, because it's the Chris Harden Archive channel where I win my awards and upload my best content. Just ignore the 4,000 subscriber count. YouTube doesn't show it, but they're missing 3 zeros at the end of that. The Archive channel really has 4 million subscribers, not 4,000, yeah. This main channel can barely touch public access TV, so if you want to see even more of Vermilion County, Illinois, I'll have another video uploaded on the Archive channel, and I'll have a link for it down below once it's uploaded. Meanwhile, this is Oakwood, Illinois. Situated about 7.5 miles due west from downtown Danville, Oakwood is home to about 1,300 people as of the 2020 census. That's down from a 1980 population of 1,627. According to the most credible source on the internet, you know, the only website that I ever get any information from according to some of you, that being Wikipedia, Oakwood has been home to several notable people. What up, Margaret W. Campbell, Darren Fletcher, Bobby Pierce, Angela Watson, Cameron Lee? Although Oakwood wasn't settled until 1870, people first began to settle in the area back in 1824 to work in the area's salt mines. That's right, the salt mines, not the coal mines, but the salt mines. So if you find the people around here to be extra salty about the economic outlook in modern days, there's your connection. Their ancestors probably worked in the area salt mines, so their bloodstreams are organically extra salty. They just can't help it. It's also in the water. Well, it wasn't until 1870 and 1871 when the railroad was built through Oakwood, in which that railroad connected Indianapolis and Bloomington. Today, there are no remains of any salt mines with the exception of salty bloodstreams that result in salty attitudes towards the future economic outlook. I kid, people, don't take it personally. All kidding aside, I think everyone in the area can admit that Oakwood, as well as the surrounding communities, are far from striking economic gold. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Vermilion County, Illinois, is the single county that's a part of the Danville metro area. Now, a metro area consists of municipalities that are reliant economically upon a principal city, and that principal city in the Danville metro area is... Anyone want to take a guess? Danville, thanks for playing. And all you have to do is see my video on Danville to see just how badly things have gone for that city. This 24/7 Wall Street article has the 10 fastest shrinking metro areas in the country, and it has Danville listed as the 9th fastest shrinking metro area in the nation. Another list from 24/7 Wall Street ranked the Danville metro area as the 6th most dangerous metro area in the country. This 2010 article from the Rockford Register-Star, yes, 2010 article, so it was posted nearly 15 years ago, but trust me, not much has changed for the better anywhere in this state over the last 15 years. If anything, it's only gotten worse. But this 2010 Rockford Register-Star article is acknowledging that while their region sucks too, they're not Danville. Kind of like how Cleveland brags about, they're not Detroit. I mean, how weird of a flex is that, by the way? Oh, yeah, we have the highest unemployment rate in the state, but at least we're not Danville. Yeah, they've been number one in joblessness for 237 straight months. Yeah, so take that, Danville. We here in Rockford, we've only been the highest for just 58 months. I mean, come on, please. Just so everyone who's from Oakwood who sees this video doesn't get mad, Oakwood is not Danville. Most of the negative stats for the county come from Danville, not Oakwood. Hoopeston isn't all that great either. Anyway, Oakwood became a coal mining center in the 1890s, and that's when the railroads really served their purpose for this region. The salt mines were actually first discovered by the Kickapoo and Potawatomi Indians early on, and then later when government surveyors came through and found the salt mines. Salt mining in this region never became what coal mining did, though. At one point, the Danville area was one of the largest coal producers in the country, with 1 million tons of coal being mined in the year 1895. Coal mining didn't last long in the area, however, with mining activity mostly ending by the 1960s when only 6 mines remained in all of Vermilion County. Today, there are none left. Well, there's not much more to Oakwood, so let's fast forward to Muncie. Muncie is 3.5 miles due west of Oakwood, or about 11 miles west of Danville. The town was platted in 1875 along the Indiana, Bloomington, and Western Railway, which are the same tracks that headed through Oakwood, and once again, the tracks were completed through the area in 1870 and 1871, so it makes sense that Muncie was platted in 1875, which, by the way, the railroad line that served Oakwood and Muncie has been long gone. Like many other abandoned stretches of railroad, it's slowly being transformed into a recreational trail. Today, there's only 2 stretches that have been completed, one between Danville and Oakwood and another between Urbana and St. Joseph. Eventually, if plans continue, the Kickapoo Rail Trail will head right through Muncie and it will connect Danville with Urbana. Anyway, Muncie was originally going to be named Corbly after the man who not only owned the land that Muncie sits on, but who also platted the town, Edward Corbly. Then the town was going to be called Independence, but they finally made a decision and decided to call it Muncie. Not sure why, but that's the name that they chose. And shortly after Muncie became a village, Corbly made a deal with the railroad to put a train station in town. Well, Corbly owned a farm just east of Muncie, and apparently he brought Texas cattle fever to the area when he brought his cows over from Texas. Well, he didn't stay in the area long. Maybe he felt guilty because shortly after, he moved west to Missouri and never looked back. But as you can see, not much here. Just a place on the map that didn't need to be here, quite frankly, in the first place, but was built because someone who owned some land wanted to build a town back in the day. No other reason. It's a village that's home to only 157 people as of the 2020 census, and the place never had more than 324, as that was the count all the way back in 1900. Muncie has always been an agricultural community that has somewhat relied on the salt and coal mining operations back when salt and coal mines were still around. Muncie, however, has always been overshadowed by the neighboring communities of Fithian and Oakwood, as those communities were already established by the time that Muncie came into existence. Oftentimes in these no-name towns, sorry Muncie, yeah, you're a no-name town, but oftentimes in these no-name towns, you can come across a quirky shop here and there, and this is unquestionably the coolest thing that you can find in Muncie. The sign says, Stony Creek Trading Post, antiques, weird stuff, cool junk. Yeah, that's how to be original. There's probably all kinds of weird crap inside that over time has turned into cool junk that has been collected from the area's farms and small towns. And some of it's probably still a lot of weird crap. Next up is Fithian, which is larger than Muncie, but not quite as big as Oakwood. Home to about 488 people as of the 2020 census, the population peaked in 1970 at 562. And just like with the rest of these dinky little towns, it'll probably never get back to that number. Fithian was founded by Dr. William Fithian in 1870, the same year that the railroad was built through. Dr. Fithian established the village as a stop along the railroad for his cattle ranch. You know, that's just what rich people did back then. Today, rich people move to the expensive coastal areas and invest in a real estate inventory, but 150 years ago, Rich people had cattle ranches and opened up train stations. Or so it seems, at least, when taking a look at rural Vermilion County. Dr. Fithian apparently was a close friend of Abraham Lincoln, so that's all good and dandy. He also had a mansion in Danville that still stands today. The train depot that you saw just a second ago was built along the same line that went through both Muncie and Oakwood. The Illinois Terminal Railroad Company bought the same line sometime in the early 1900s, and it served as both a passenger and a freight line. The line ran all the way from Danville to Springfield, with the last passenger train running in 1956. Today, the Fithian depot is now a house. Otherwise, there's not much else to Fithian. But if you want to know more, you're in luck, because you can buy a book for $52.50 off of heritagebooks.com. So that's all good and dandy. The only way that these towns survive, these towns like Fithian, Muncie, and a few others that I'll show you as the video goes along, the only way is if younger generations who are moving out of Danville settle in some of these towns that are located right outside of the city so that they don't have to be too far away from family. But the problem with Vermilion County and Danville is that the younger generations are moving away from the area altogether. But really, that's the only factor that will keep younger generations in not only the Danville area, but in many of these small Midwestern cities throughout Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, all of the Midwest states. Younger generations throughout the rural Midwest are continuing to move to larger metro areas where there's more economic opportunity. Or on a smaller scale, people are moving to the Champaign-Urbanas of the country where there's more amenities and economic opportunities. And they're ditching the economically declining rural areas altogether. This map here shows that only a few counties have grown in population in rural Illinois. Forget the suburban Chicago counties. Not only that, but with a deeper look at it, you'll see teeny tiny numbers for the counties in green. 67 for Brown County, only 33 for Piatt County, only 4 for Monroe County, and only 8 for Johnson County. Nearly every county in red has a much greater number that resembles a population decline. Vermilion County has among the highest percentages of decline out of them all, as it's estimated to have lost 2,357 people since 2020. The only counties with a greater whole number are counties that have more people. And without doing the math, it looks like Vermilion County has a higher percentage loss than mostly every other county in Illinois. Anyway, looking at stuff like this makes you wonder how many of these dinky little towns like Fithian can stick around for the test of time. Welcome to Sidell, where not much happens and where the past is present. More than the present is present. Actually, I take that back, because apparently the grocery store here gets robbed a lot. This happened only a week prior to me uploading this video, and I guess that was the 5th time recently that the grocery store here was robbed? Really, I was just looking for a video that pronounced the name of the town so I don't get a bunch of jabronis in the comments saying, "Ah, it's Sidell, you idiot, not Sidell." But it seems like my first assumption was right. Sidell. Anyway, the village of Sidell is situated in the extreme southwestern part of Vermilion County, about 15 miles southwest from Danville. There's no state highway here serving the village, as the closest one is over 6 miles away. There's also not a direct road to get to Danville. Really, it's just a handful of county roads that'll lead you towards Sidell. The village of Sidell, along with Sidell Township, was named after John Sidell, who purchased some land in the area after coming from Ohio in 1861. In Sidell, just like with the previous towns that I've shown you, the railroad is no longer here. The village first began as an unincorporated community called Sidell Grove, which was in Sidell Township. In 1880, rail transportation through Sidell Township was planned, with a telegraph line being built parallel to the Chicago and Eastern Railroad. 4 years later, Sidell was officially able to establish as a village. The first passenger train ran through in 1882, and the first general store opened in a room of the original train depot. Sidell was actually the last stop along the railroad until it was expanded in 1889. Interestingly enough, the town of Archie, which is 1 mile south of Sidell, was laid out 1 year prior than Sidell was. But you wouldn't be able to know that from looking at a map today. For whatever reason, Sidell prospered and Archie did not. By 1890, a post office, a church, and a school were built, along with several other businesses. Apparently, whatever businesses were located in Archie a mile to the south quickly abandoned Archie and moved north to Sidell. Also by this time, most of the town had been built, and the future was looking bright. The town had blacksmiths, doctors, hotels, a tile factory, a brick factory, a bank, a grain elevator, and even a grand opera house. Imagine that. Sidell, with a population of under 500 people today, once had a grand opera house. Anyway, it's thought that there were over 30 businesses in town at its peak. Safe to say that there isn't anywhere close to that number today, although there are a few businesses here and there. Over the years, the brick making, the tile production, and the businesses started to fade away slowly but surely, and the town hasn't seen any real growth since 1920 when the population peaked at 800. The decline of the importance of the railroad can be much to blame, as that was the only reason that the town was able to grow in the first place. Otherwise, it's not in an ideal location. There's no state highway running through, once again, nor is there a direct road to Danville from here, so those things play a pretty big factor. Sidell is just kind of out here in the middle of nowhere in extreme southwest Vermilion County, and it doesn't have many resources or amenities to make younger generations want to stay in the area. Today, the town's population is down to 489, or about half of its 1920 peak, and it's probably going to continue to decline as the years go along, despite the character that it might appear to have with its brick-paved main street and bones for a decent little downtown. The problem is that nobody passes through here since there is no highway serving it, therefore, nobody who is from here ever comes here. Except for me, of course. Otherwise, yeah, hardly anyone ever comes here. Go up to a random person on the streets in Danville and ask them if they've ever been to Sidell. They'll probably say no. Before we move on from Sidell, just east of town is a road that twists and turns on its way to Indianola, which is a town that you can see in my second video that will be uploaded to my archive channel, and of course will be linked down below once it's uploaded. But east of Sidell, on this windy road, you can see an old railroad bridge, which was a part of one of the many now abandoned railroad lines in the Danville area, so that was pretty neat to see.
What up, Ridge Farm?
This is Ridge Farm, which, unlike that railroad overpass, is not so neat to see, aside from a few historic buildings here and there. Unlike Sidell, Ridge Farm is located off of a main highway, that being Illinois State Route 1/US 150. It heads straight to Danville, but in the case of Ridge Farm, it doesn't seem like having a state or US highway serving it has made any difference. In my opinion, from driving through Ridge Farm, I thought it looked sad and depressing. Unfortunate, really. It's the first of two towns in this video that really stuck out to me with having a large presence of abandoned buildings. Ridge Farm is located along the southern border of Vermilion County. The village was first settled by Abraham Smith, who moved his farm from Tennessee to the area in 1839 and called it Ridge Farm, as it's located along a glacial ridge. In 1841, Smith built a post office, a blacksmith shop, a hotel, tavern, and a general store. The railroad was built through town in 1873, and that encouraged more growth with a flour mill, lumberyard, hardware store, and other businesses setting up shop shortly after. And hey, Abraham Lincoln stayed in town a few times along his travels throughout Illinois as a lawyer, so that's cool, I guess. It's not really a unique thing to any city in Illinois to have a connection to Abraham Lincoln, as I've learned. He was quite the traveling man during his years as a lawyer, but every town in Illinois seems to be super proud of the fact that Abraham Lincoln once slept in a room in their city. Well, today Ridge Farm's population has dropped down to 787, down from a peak of around 1,100 in 1980. It's hard to see this place ever getting back to above 1,000 anytime soon. In my opinion, it's too far away from any thriving economic city to expect to see any sort of growth occurring soon. Like, something unpredictable would have to happen, like the state of Illinois getting a huge tax reform, plus an investor building a corporate office with high-paying jobs. But nobody thinks that a corporate investor will bring high-paying jobs to Ridge Farm, Illinois, and nobody thinks that a tax break is coming soon for the state of Illinois. Look, I know that my opinions of Ridge Farm has made some of you mad. That's not my goal, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you share opinions. You win some, you lose some. It's all good. You can be mad at me, go ahead, let me have it in the comments, but that won't change the fact that Ridge Farm is a dying small town and that it's far away from any economically thriving city, and it's very likely that the town will continue to decline and lose people in the upcoming decades. That really isn't a shot at anybody who lives here. That's just what I think the place is heading towards. And prove me wrong. Hey, if I'm wrong, go ahead. Let me have it in the comments. I'll look for it. Anyway, this downtown area isn't looking so good in 2024. There's a few occupied storefronts, but there's more empty storefronts than occupied ones, it seems. And it also seems like there's been several buildings torn down over the years. Up ahead is a Carnegie Library, which is one of the smallest Carnegie libraries in the nation. So, like I said, there's some buildings here and there that are worth looking at, some historic homes, a historic library, but there's a lot of abandoned stuff, like the school across the street. That just needs to be torn down. Hopefully Ridge Farm can gather up the funds to tear it down. There's also some homes surrounding the school that are in pretty rough shape as well. Some final notes here on Ridge Farm, as apparently one of the claims to fame for Ridge Farm is that Elvis Presley would often stop at the Ridge Cafe on his drives between Memphis and Chicago. He once went to the back to see if there was an Elvis Presley record for them to play at the cafe, and the waitress apparently didn't know who he was. Well, some homes in town were used in part of the Underground Railroad as well, and Abraham Smith, who founded the town, strongly opposed the rights to own slaves, and he once said, "I do not judge the slave owners. That is for a higher power. I only know the institution is wrong. It is contrary to the laws of God and the Constitution drawn up by our forefathers." Additionally, Abraham Smith was good friends with Abraham Lincoln, and we all know Lincoln's role in fighting against slavery. 5.5 miles north is Georgetown, which is one of the older municipalities in all of Vermilion County. Georgetown was established in 1826 and was platted by James Hallworth. The name Georgetown is thought to have either come from James's son or from the brother of Dan Beckwith, whom Danville is named after. Georgetown is 10 miles south of Danville, and there was once an interurban line that carried passengers between the two cities, but that service ended sometime in the early 1900s. Before the railroad was built through Georgetown, there was apparently a 13-mile-long plank road that connected it with Perrysville, Indiana. Early Georgetown residents would go to Perrysville rather than Danville to shop, as there wasn't a connection yet to Danville. See? Told ya. Although there isn't a road from Georgetown to Perrysville either on this map. At the time, the town only had a doctor's office and a few other businesses, while Perrysville offered more shopping. Well, later on, a stagecoach line was built between Georgetown and Danville, followed by the railroad in 1871. Many of Georgetown's residents during the late 1800s worked in the area coal mines. Many would take the train to work at the mines, or they would take it to Danville doing other lines of work. That being said, Georgetown has always been a bedroom community. Or what I like to say, just to rile people up, a suburb to Danville in that aspect. Same story with the communities that sit between Georgetown and Danville. Along with the coal mining industry, glass making was big around here, as was the zinc industry. Many of the settlers were from various European countries, with Belgium, Germany, French, and Irish being some of the bigger groups of immigrants. When it comes to religious groups, Quakers made up a large portion of the population, followed by Roman Catholics and other Christian denominations. Georgetown's population peaked in 1980 at 4,200. Since then, it's lost over 1,000 people, with the population now being 3,100 while continuing to decline. The reason why it's declining is the same reason why the rest of the county is declining. That reason being a sluggish economy. No jobs, no hope for the future, high taxes. 5 miles east, you can live more affordably because of that last reason. There's not much of a reason for people from the outside to want to move to Georgetown, while at the same time, there's plenty of reasons for current working-class generations to want to live elsewhere. It's why Vermilion County as a whole has lost 26,000 people since 1970. That's a big amount of people. 5 miles north of Georgetown along the $1 million of debt highway is Westville. Westville is very similar to Georgetown. Both towns are the same size, they're both along the $1 million of debt highway, that being Illinois State Route 1. They were both developed as stops along the railroad south of Danville, and they both thrived off the extensive coal mining that used to take place in this region. The people of Westville considered themselves to be Little Chicago, as they were a melting pot of ethnicities due to workers moving to the area to work in the coal mines. and I really hope that they realized that they're an extremely little Chicago. Extremely little, as Westville, Illinois resembles nothing close to the culture, size, and lifestyle of Chicago, but nonetheless, that's the nickname that they gave themselves. About 2,500 of the town's original settlers were of Lithuanian descent, however, so at least they have that if they want to make themselves unique. Here's the original train depot, looking nice in the center of Westville. Always like seeing these kinds of buildings being preserved. But if Westville is really searching for those connections with Chicago, here's another one that they can go off of, because apparently most of the Lithuanians who resided in the area left for Chicago once the coal mining activity started to end. There's also a Lithuanian cemetery on the south end of town, reminding everyone of the strong Lithuanian population of Westville's early days. Today, the population has been taken over by a mad gang of Mountain Dew drinking hilljacks. But anyway, looking at the population of Westville, that must explain the sudden decline in population in 1920, as that's when the coal mining activities started to really decline. Once again, Georgetown also saw a peak population of around 4,200, but Georgetown's population didn't start to really decline until 1980, whereas with Westville, the decline started in 1920, so that's interesting. Anyway, Georgetown and Westville are only 2 of 5 communities that string the $1 million of debt highway south of Danville that all combine to have about 10,000 people or so. The only other sizable town would be Tilton, and you can see that village in my second video if you wish, with the link for that once again being down below. But if you've seen my Danville video already, you wouldn't know if you're in Tilton or if you're in Danville by just driving around without my fancy award-winning graphics on the bottom of the screen. Yeah, I was listening to some Nostalgia Tours radio while I was driving around and filming this. By the way, the next greatest YouTube channel out there is called Nostalgia Tours Radio. You should check it out. And by the way, YouTube messed up again. That's 629,000 followers, not 629. But anyway, the link for it is down below. It's my latest channel that I'm trying to grow, so I'd really appreciate it if you gave that a follow. I have a pretty big video planned to come out on that channel in about a month from now. It's the entire stretch of US 66, and I listened to some really bad radio along the way. So if you like these stupid jokes, and if you also like taking virtual road trips, go ahead and subscribe to that channel.
Yeah!
Catlin. That's where we are now. Aside from a Casey's, there's not much here. Good to know that if my car ever gets stranded here, though, that there will be a place for contact lens solution. Seriously, I'm talking about experience here. Casey's almost always comes through in the clutch in these dollar store-dominated small towns that are deprived of actual quality stores. Danville isn't too far away from here, though. It's only 5.5 miles to the northeast, so if you maybe need some melatonin along with that contact solution, you shouldn't be too far away. The first settlement here was actually called Butler's Point, and it was back in 1820 when people first moved to the area. The community started as an agricultural community, and it's pretty much been that ever since. And while the city's website claims that Catlin is a community that continues to prosper and grow, the facts would say otherwise. They should update their website, as it appears that the Danville effect has got them, or maybe I should say the Illinois effect. It's really an Illinois thing more than it is a Danville thing. Anyway, Catlin peaked in 1980 with a population of 2,200 or so. Today that number is down to 1,900, so not as big of a decline as we've seen in some of the other communities, but unfortunately that number will likely continue to decline as time goes on, given the state and region that it's in. I mean, sorry people. The coal mining jobs aren't coming back, and it appears that the manufacturing jobs aren't either, at least to this part of Illinois, as they continue to close places like Danville's longtime Quaker Oats facility. So you'll have to try to find a way to transition to new industries to rely on economically if you want this area to grow again, and good luck trying to do that in the state of Illinois. It's not really your fault, and I actually do feel bad for people who want to see this area grow. Really, it's not their fault. Well, the city's website continues to say, Catlin's location near the economic center of Vermilion County, along with its ease of travel to regional attractions and strong community pride, has helped to foster a community that is large enough to serve you, but small enough to know you. That's cute. Also, it's like they think that Danville is an economic center or something. Weird. Okay, sorry people. Sorry, I'm done. I'm a really nice guy, you know, really. I am. I'll finish it off by saying this, because really, if I had to live in the Danville area, like absolutely had to live in the area, and I couldn't live in Indiana, it had to be on the Illinois side, I would probably pick Catlin based on everything that I've seen from here, because it doesn't seem to have the problems of Danville, but it's close enough to Danville where you wouldn't have to live too far away from your day-to-day shopping needs. Not that Danville has every amenity that I would desire to live close to, but I would probably choose Catlin. I'm not just saying that either because I'm in Catlin. See? Because I'm in Rankin now, and I'm still saying that I would choose Catlin if I had to live anywhere in this area. Speaking of Rankin, what a disaster this place looks like. This town does have the problems of Danville. Well, I don't know if it has all of the problems of Danville, but it does have one problem in common, and that would be urban blight. It seems like no matter where you stand in this town, you can see an abandoned building. Some of them are caked with graffiti too, like you would see in a place like Danville, and quite frankly, wouldn't expect to see in a place like Rankin that's out in the boondocks. Rankin is in Butler Township in far northwestern Vermilion County. Just to show you how massive Vermilion County, Illinois is in land area, Rankin is 27 miles northwest of Danville, so it takes at least half an hour to get to Danville from here. That's if you go 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. The closest towns of decent size would actually be either Hoopeston or Paxton. Hoopeston is 10 miles to the east, while Paxton is 10 miles west. But Rankin is what I fear most of these small Illinois towns will look like in the following decades, and I mean all of them. For whatever reason, Rankin is a few steps ahead of the other towns in this area. Rankin was once home to a small rail yard maintenance shop. The shop moved to Frankfort, Indiana in 1932 when it was no longer needed in this area. The railroad no longer runs through Rankin either, despite it being built along the railroad as a stop. Speaking of railroads, there is apparently a rivalry between Rankin and the no longer existing town of Pellsville, which was located a mile to the west. Today, the only remains of Pellsville would be a crookedly shaped road that makes a loop through a farm field in the shape of what I'm assuming was the street layout of Pellsville, and then you have a small cemetery. Well, the two towns fought over who would get the railroad station along the Lake Erie and Western Railroad that ran through both towns, and Rankin won. Today, Rankin isn't winning, though. Rankin's population peaked in 1920 at 944. It's been a long and slow decline since then, with a decline of nearly 100 between 2010 and 2020. I'd imagine that the median age of a Rankin residence is pretty high, and that the population will decline sharply in the following few decades as the older generations pass away. Well, people, it is now that time. What did we learn in this video? We learned that you can't always trust a camera's stabilization, and you can't always trust weird crap and cool junk, but you want to check it out anyway. But you can always trust Chris's livability score.
Education.
You have several high schools serving rural Vermilion County. You have Georgetown Ridge Farm High School, Westville High School, Salt Fork High School, Oakwood High School, and Hoopeston Area High School. If you go back towards the very beginning of this video, Oakwood High School performs the best academically out of them all, and Oakwood performs just slightly below the state average. The next best performing high school, according to U.S. News, would be Georgetown Ridge Farm High School, and then it's a crapshoot between Westville, Salt Fork, and Hoopeston Area High Schools, as those three perform notably below average. Education gets a 7 out of 20.
Crime.
Outside of Hoopeston and Danville, you don't have too big of a crime problem. Not in the places that I showed you in this video anyway. Some of these places are too small to measure a crime rate anyway, as one bad apple can send the stats through the roof. So crime gets a 15 out of 20.
Downtown.
This is a weird one to score, as obviously there's not just one downtown to go off of. There's quite a few actually, and none of them looked good. Not one. Georgetown looked the most vibrant, and that place didn't even look so hot, so I'll give downtown a 4 out of 20.
Economy.
Look, if you've been listening, I've been talking about the economy in this entire video. It's awful. I talked about how the coal mining jobs is what built this region, but all the coal mining jobs are gone, and so are half of the railroads that these towns developed on in the first place. If you don't come from a family that's passing down their land for you to farm, that's assuming you want to be a farmer, you're screwed. You're screwed because you don't have much of an opportunity to make a good living and have a good paying, long-lasting career in this area, and that's why everyone has so many mental health issues in places like Danville, and it's very unfortunate. It's also why people keep moving away from places like Danville. Economy gets a 2 out of 20.
Recreation.
Recreational opportunities are actually okay for a middle-of-nowhere place like Vermilion County. You have Kickapoo State Park, you have some woods and hills that make the geography somewhat interesting, you have a few rivers if you like kayaking or fishing, and at least one of the old railroad lines is starting to be transformed into a long pedestrian trail, so that's cool. Look, I'm trying to be nice here where I can be. Recreation gets a 7 out of 20.
History.
And I'll continue to be nice because historically there's a lot to mention with Vermilion County. Look at this region. It was once thriving as one of the top coal-producing regions in the country. Everyone talks about West Virginia and Pennsylvania when it comes to coal production, but central and southern Illinois had huge coal deposits, and coal production was a huge part of the economy for most of the state. Not anymore, though. Also, there are so many small little towns that dot the map here in Vermilion County. It's absurd. Over half of the railroad lines that built them are all gone too. And I don't know, it's just kind of fascinating to just look at how many towns there are and how many railroads there were that sprawled from Danville at one point. It just shows how prosperous this area once was. History gets a 16 out of 20.
Amenities.
I mean, this is a joke, right? Amenities are far and few in between in rural Vermilion County. Try buying a place in Rankin and living there for a year. You'll miss living close to good grocery stores and other big box stores that supply you with anything that you would need in any given moment, unless you're one of those weirdos that orders everything online, and I mean everything, including groceries, and in that case, you suck, and you're the reason why life as we know it is coming to an end. Amenities gets a 2 out of 20.
Cost of living.
It also doesn't help that Danville continues to lose retailers left and right. You might be better off driving to Champaign. Alright, so cost of living, the last category. It won't cost you much to buy a home in any of these struggling, dying small towns. Not at all. You can buy a move-in ready home in Catlin for $145,000 right now if you want, or even less. Heck, Georgetown even has a 1,200 square foot move-in ready home for $115,000. Or if you think you can live in Rankin, you can buy this 1,600 square foot home for only $70,000 and only fix up a few things and you have yourself a house. The problems, of course, with that $70,000 home would be the $2,000 annual property tax. A house worth $70,000 in Indiana, 10 miles to the east, would be only about $200 annually. Of course, you also have no options of good-paying jobs. So yeah, unless you work remotely, good-paying jobs would be very hard to come by in this area. You know, there's a reason why these homes are so cheap. It's because people keep moving out of this area, and nobody's moving in. And the economy sucks, no jobs are moving in, jobs keep moving away. Yeah, not a good formula. Well, cost of living anyway gets a 19 out of 20. All in all, the Chris Livability score for rural Vermilion County, Illinois is 72 out of 160, which actually puts it towards the top out of all of the Illinois places that I've done this for so far. Well, I've referenced it throughout this video, but I've made another video on the county seat of Vermilion County, which is Danville, and you can see what all of the problems are associated with that city here. If you don't want to see that, I've made a video on Hoopeston, which is a smaller city in northeast Vermilion County, and it has the worst high school mascot name ever, and you can see that video here. Peace.